Hi, I'm Dr. Don Deems. I'm glad to be back again. My gratitude and deep thanks go out to Dr. Bill Waltham and Baylor College of Dentistry, my alma mater, for allowing me to present another program. This topic is about dentist as CEO. Well, guess what? It's not a question at all, actually. It's reality. So many dentists don't think of themselves as a CEO, right? They're like, well, I'm a dentist. Well, no, you are a CEO too, because you are going to run a business. That is, unless you end up working for a corporation or some other organization where you're just an employee. But most dentists will be their own CEO. Okay? So I want to look at you as a CEO and have you start thinking of yourself as that and what the things are that might involve you being a CEO. So without further ado, we're going to go into this, okay? So like it or not, okay, you're the CEO and you're going to be juggling a lot more apples than what that guy is doing, but if he was actually juggling that many, I'm pretty impressed. I think that's photoshopped, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But like it or not, you are a CEO, okay? So what is a CEO? We hear that word just thrown around all the time. So what is a CEO? Well, a technical definition might go something like this. A chief executive officer, or a CEO, is generally the most senior corporate officer, executive, or administrator in charge of managing a for-profit or non-profit organization. Okay, well, all right, we got that out of the way. I think we all get it. It's the person in charge of everything, okay? It's the person in charge of everything. So the big question is, put on your gloves, are you CEO material? Well, you're going to get your chance, all right? So one of the things I'd like to accomplish today is to know, well, what are the things, if I'm a CEO, that I ought to be looking at, okay? So let's do those, okay? So Forbes magazine did a thing about this, and it was asking, you know, what are really the 5 qualities of a CEO that we ought to look at? And so there were really 5 questions, and the first one was, are you a leader? Okay? And so there's a difference between being a leader or an entrepreneur. Sometimes dentists think of themselves as entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs are like Pied Pipers, okay? Somebody that goes merrily along and trying new things, and you know, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Unfortunately, Pied Piping does not work well in dentistry. You can't be the CEO and be a Pied Piper. Let that to the other creative types who can afford to do that, okay? As a CEO and being a leader, you must keep a watchful eye on the practice. Now, the dog in the picture is not baring its teeth, but it has a very watchful eye. Those border collies and Australian sheepdogs are amazing animals at being able to do herding, and they have a lot of great qualities which we could actually translate into being a CEO. So I like that picture, you know, because of that. They also make sure that everyone understands what needs to be done. Whoa, I can't emphasize that more importantly. Everyone understand what needs to be done. One of the complaints I hear a lot is, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. You know, that's what I hear from offices. You know, if I talk to a staff member at another office, well, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. You know, there's no job description, there's been no training. The person wants to do a good job, but they don't have any idea. Is the leader is the doctor being a good CEO? No, he's not, okay? So part of being a CEO is doing that. There is also something that you may not think of, but it is super, super critical. It's creating a sense of urgency on getting things done. If you don't, it probably won't get done. So creating that sense of urgency is a hallmark of being a good CEO. All right? Now, not everything needs to be done yesterday, and not everything needs to be done today, but there are a lot of things that need to be done pretty soon, okay? And so creating deadlines, creating timelines for certain things getting done is very important in creating a sense of urgency, holding accountability, and letting people know that, hey, this is important, okay? So create that sense of urgency. The second thing that they looked at is, do you possess foresight? In other words, do you have a crystal ball? I do. No, I don't. But you want to be able to look ahead and see what's going on. So a good CEO must be able to see around the corners for what's going on. All right. What is that? How do you do that? I mean, how are you able to see around the corners? Well, how you do that is by practicing. You read, you look at trends, you spot these trends, you see what's going on. You recognize what has to be done for the good of the practice. Pay attention to what's going on. That foresight is what's going to keep your practice going. And today the rate of change is so fast that those businesses, and not just practices, dental practices, but any business that is not able to change quickly and adapt to what's going on will be out of business. And pretty much that includes dentistry, and dentists are going bankrupt. So, not to scare you, I'm just saying that pay attention. You got to be a CEO, and that means look around the corners, recognize what needs to be done, look for these trends. Now, another hallmark was, do you love problem solving? Now, I really am bad at Rubik's Cubes. If you're good at it, maybe you can teach me some tricks. But solving problems is a huge thing, okay? Now, how you go about solving problems is a whole nother topic, but you must have a passion for problem solving. You must have a passion for that. Good CEOs are always looking for ways to help solve problems, okay? Big or small. They also have to figure out which ones need their focus and which ones they can delegate or which ones just need to be let go of, okay? So a good CEO is able to differentiate between those. I suggest whenever possible, use your team. It gives them a sense of belonging to your practice. And it just also, many people think, well, if you delegate, you lose your importance as being the leader or the CEO of the practice. Quite contrary. It actually reinforces your position as the CEO of the practice. Focus relentlessly on the ones that need your attention. Do not let them go. Just because you're tired or because you want to take off early and go ride your bike or something like that, that is not the right thing to do. As a CEO, you're going to be spending extra time with your practice, whether it's after hours or on weekends or things like that. Being a dentist and owning your own practice is not for the faint of heart, okay? It's not for the faint of heart. So focus relentlessly on the things that need your attention, okay? Get those problems solved and don't let them go, okay? Don't let them go until they are completely fixed. The golden goal that you would like to have is being able to solve a problem once and for all so that it never ever comes back. That would be great. In other words, don't look for a simple fix just so that it's out of the way. Look for a way that's going to solve it, once and for all. All right? Now, the other thing that often gets in the way, and it's actually the source of most problems, is this thing that we all have, and it's called ego. As you age, you will recognize that letting go of your ego is a lifelong project. All right? Letting go of your ego is a lifelong project. And the red curtain there, you don't have to be the spotlight all the time, but you've got to be able to put your practice ahead of your ego, okay? Because if you don't, you're going to be less than successful. You're going to be unsatisfied with what is going on. Always do what's best for the practice at any moment in time, all right? Learn to swallow your ego. Learn to just let go, all right, of that. Because egos are the things that get in the way. They will get you in trouble with patients. They will get you in trouble with staff. They will get you in trouble with state boards. They will get you in trouble with a lot of things. And so try to learn to let go of your ego. It's there. We all have one, okay? And the more you let it control your thoughts and actions, the more problems you're going to have, and you're not going to be a very efficient CEO. You will have plenty of chance to be the spotlight, so don't worry about that. You don't need to manufacture times for that to happen, okay? Another very important aspect of you being a CEO is being financially savvy, something that probably most everybody who comes out of dental school is not ready to do. They know they're in debt, and they know they need to earn some money, and so they just don't pay attention to the details, okay, of what's going on. This is an area that I can't overemphasize enough, and that's learning about finances, okay? Now, you don't need to become a CPA, you don't need to have an MBA, but I do recommend that you learn as much as you can about the financial elements of a practice. So it needs to go beyond more than, this is what we produce, this is what we collected, so here we are, okay? It's got to be more than that. You want to be able to read a balance sheet, an income and expense sheet. You want to be able to have a conversation with your CPA about what's going on, okay? Use these kinds of professionals to not only help you, but to help educate you also. There are many courses that you can take that will help you understand not just the basic skills, but also some of the more involved skills. Look for trends in what's going on financially. This is very important. If you don't see trends, you're not able to respond appropriately before you're in big trouble. And so doctors will find themselves in huge areas of trouble financially because they weren't paying attention and they'd let things slip, and you know, they found out that the assistant was doing this, ordering all this stuff, and they go and they look in the cabinet and there's all this stuff that they just don't need, or that worst case scenario, somebody's embezzling money, which happens way too often. Maybe staff is over time has, you know, you being the nice, generous person you are, or giving them raises, and all of a sudden you realize that you're really stuck because you know, once you've given that money, it's almost impossible to take back unless you want to lose the employee. So be careful. Now, a common thing that comes up in a practice is you know, are you running a business, or are you the head of a family? Because most dental practices are relatively small, have a small number of employees, many times people revert to run them like families, like there's a mom and a pop, and then there's the kids. I would suggest to you that you don't do it that way, that you are running a business, and that it should be run like that. Now, that being said, does not mean that you can't be sensitive to whatever's going on in their life. I talked about that in another program about healthy workplaces. So just understand, though, that don't get confused about, is this a business or a family that I'm working with? Your tendency, because you work so closely with people, is that they're a family, all right? And sometimes people say, oh, we're one big happy family. Well, how about we're one big happy team, okay? That's a much better approach to that. So if you find yourself thinking about your practice as a family, that's not being a good CEO, and try to make some changes, okay? So you can't be both, right? You just can't be both. People try and fail, so you can't be it. So I'm asking you to choose to be the practice. So let's talk about what you need to get ready for as the CEO, what's heading your way, because like it or not, doing the dentistry is the simplest part of your life. The other stuff is going to be much more complicated and is going to be a source of areas that you need help and that you need training in, okay? So I'm going to go over what these are first and then talk just a little bit more about each of them in general. Systems. CEO is in charge of having good systems in place. Procedures. We know about dental procedures, but what about personnel procedures? Okay. What about emergency preparedness, things like that? All right. Emergency planning is not just for when you may have a medical emergency in your practice, because you will have those more than likely. It's not just about that, but it also gives your staff a sense of comfort to know that, well, if something happened to me, they're ready to handle something to me, okay? So that's something that you got to be looking at. Obviously, HIPAA and the American Disabilities Act are things that are very important in terms of what you undertake as a CEO. The dental records are important. Human resources, okay, or HR as they call it. All these sorts of things are absolute necessary parts of your practice that will be under your direction as the CEO, okay? Again, you don't have to do all these parts, but they need to be done, and you've got to make sure that they are done. Marketing is another part of running your practice, being the CEO of your practice, making those decisions about marketing, okay? It falls under that too. Third-party issues come into play an awful lot. Everything from dental insurance companies that you have to deal with to malpractice insurance companies, your state dental board, all kinds of outside sources that want to come in, even to small things that just irritate you, like the firemen coming in inspecting your fire extinguishers once a year, things like that. Those all fall under things that are a CEO. Work-life balance as a CEO is very important. In another program, I mentioned about the fact that, having that work-life balance is very important, not just for you, but for your employees. You can't take care of other people well unless you also take care of yourself, okay? So be a model for that as a CEO. Now, systems. Let me just go into slight more detail about systems. And what do I mean by systems? Systems are a set of principles by which things are done in your practice. It's just that simple, all right? There is a system. There should be a system for everything that you do, okay? There should be a system for everything that you do. I know starting out it's rather daunting, and I wouldn't suggest that you try to reinvent the wheel. Ask for help, get help. Work with dentists who have been around a while, dentists who have excellent practices and know what they're doing. Hire a coach, hire a consultant. Ask people to help you get all this together. You can't do all of this yourself, okay? You can't do it. I like to say we all need a village of people to help us, okay? We all need a village of people. Well-run practices have these excellent systems, and it produces very predictable results. Patients who come to your practice will compliment you on how well your practice is done because they can sense that. I think you may have probably been to maybe a medical office or a dental office or somewhere where the systems were so poor that one person didn't know what the other was doing, and it's very frustrating and difficult for the client or the customer to deal with, or patient in this case. Procedures. Procedures are very similar to systems, but we really look at procedures as defined ways of doing things, okay? Defined ways. So we have a procedure for this. There may be a procedure for a patient who is not showing up for appointments. How do we handle that? What is the procedure that's involved in that? Everybody needs to know what those are, okay? Everybody needs to know. You're going to have many, many procedures, not just dental procedures in your practice, and one of the best things that you can do is get these on paper, okay? Get these written down in a notebook and it's going to pay off in the long run. It will provide great training for future employees. Everybody's going to know what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, etc. So this is a project that will take time. Again, you can delegate some things for this, but getting it written down is super important. What about emergency planning? You know, I mentioned the fact that emergency planning is important because, you know, it gives your employees a sense of you know, of safety and security. But emergency planning is not just you having a drug kit, okay? That's not emergency planning. I mean, that may be one small component of it, but it's having the protocols in place, the practice, the education, the training for handling things that are going to happen in your practice throughout the course of your career. You know, the statistics are is that one person is going to die in your practice during your career. Okay, so the best thing you can do is be prepared. You know, at least annually have training time where you review what are, you know, emergencies. You know, how do we help prevent them? How do we recognize them? What do we do if there is one? You know, who plays what roles? What needs to be done? Okay. So as a CEO, you've got to make sure that gets scheduled, that you have that organized, that it's written out, and that you record actually when you have these training sessions. Okay. So it's not buying a drug kit that you saw in a magazine by, you know, somebody who's saying this is the most complete drug kit available. It's not going to do any good, okay, if the patient's dying and you don't know what to do with it. So you need to know more than just how to call 911. All right, HIPAA and ADA issues. These change a lot, and we're going to continue to see these change a lot in the coming years as more and more people are concerned about privacy, and as more and more people live longer and maybe have certain disabilities and now can get around and you know, they're not institutionalized anymore, etc. So being in compliance is super critical in terms of your practice. It's very expensive if you're not, okay? It's very expensive. It's not worth risking not paying attention to, okay? What about dental records? Mentioned that a little bit in the past. Dental records, this is one of the most important tasks because dental records are not only medical legal records which can you know, help protect you in case of a lawsuit, but also just so that you know what's going on with your patient. Most practices, or not most, but a lot of practices these days are paperless, which means that you know, there is not a paper record anymore. Boy, you've got to pay extra attention. You want to have backup systems, you know, and more than one, for making sure that that data is secure, that it can't be accessed by outside party. That's going to cost money, all right, to have firewalls, and not just a software firewall, but a hardware firewall set up. You know, multiple backup copies, either with hard drives, tape drives, cloud backups, whatever, okay? You want a system that is going to allow you to get everything back online if something were to crash, okay? Your server, for example, should have redundant hard drives in it so that if one crashes, you don't even miss a heartbeat, and you can just pop that one out and put a new one in and keep going, okay? So you'll rely on you know, people in that area to help you do all that. So the dental records also mean making sure that you're updated. I mean, you should really do a health update every time the patient comes in the office, or at least twice a year, at the very least once a year. People's health changes a lot. People are on lots of medications. You need to know about all that, okay? And so make sure that you do. Make sure that everything is thorough and complete, because If you ever get called on the carpet about something, make sure that you've got it, okay? It's also an important asset for your practice in terms of if there ever comes a time that you decide to sell your practice or retire. Those dental records are a tangible piece of property that have something to do with the value of your practice, okay? So you want to know what the rules and regulations are about that, make sure they're thorough, etc. And again, as a CEO, that's your responsibility to see that all that's in place. What about HR, which is a very broad topic? One of the best ways to have great HR is, first of all, to be a great boss. Being a great boss does a lot and avoids a lot of HR problems. That may sound like a very innocuous or small statement, but it is not, okay? It's a huge statement. In HR, we look at termination and hiring. You've got to have, procedures and protocols around all of that. It also means having team meetings, okay? Regular team meetings are very important. They're some of the best uses of your time. I recommend that at least once a month that you have a half-day team meeting. And you're going, oh my gosh, that's going to cost us a fortune. No way. It will more than pay back the time that you spend in doing that. It's a time when you can help with education, addressing issues, looking at procedures and protocols in your practice, looking at problems, learning all kinds of skills, etc. Sharing news when everybody can get together and go over that, okay? Morning team meetings before you start the day is another way. Those can be very short, 5 to 10 minutes, but again, are very important. Scheduling, and so you think, well, scheduling patients, is that what we're talking about? Scheduling dental appointments? No, we're not talking about scheduling dental appointments. We're talking about employee scheduling, okay? You want to have protocols for that, written protocols, written forms, something like that where you can track all of that, all right? That also has to include keeping track of the time that they work and don't work. Most employees that will work for you will not have college degrees, therefore they're paid hourly. Make sure you know what the rules are, the regulations are from the Department of Labor and from any state regulations about that. So that's a critical part of the human resources aspect. Employment agreements are a necessity. Not having one put you in a situation that could cause you a lot of grief. So you want to have an employment agreement. It's worth your while to hire a labor attorney just to review that and make sure that it's applicable to all guidelines that should be, okay, and that it's thorough, all right? Don't just get one from somebody else and say, I'll just use this one, it looks good to me. Go ahead and spend the small amount of money it's going to take to know that you're covered, okay? Know that you're covered. Benefit plans are a part of human resources, and these days benefit plans are very important in terms of employment in your practice. So you've got to make decisions about, well, what benefits am I going to offer? How do they benefit the practice? What are the tax implications, etc.? Don't give away the farm, so to speak, but at the same time, you want to have a place that is attractive for people to work in, all right? Pay fair wages, have fair benefits, and you've got that part covered, okay? There is a lot more to human resources, but that's going to be some of the basics that get you started, all right? Well, what about marketing? Of course, marketing is about attracting new clients or patients to your practice. That is an area that's changing rapidly, especially in digital media, websites, social media, internet marketing. Be a little bit careful about this, okay? It was a little bit easier for state boards to address this. Yes, I am old enough that I do remember the days when dentists never advertised or marketed their practice. They didn't have to. It was all word of mouth. And it was the dentist's reputation. Okay, those days are gone. And so now we do have to do some things that are involved with letting people know. People go to the internet all the time now for information. I do, you do. That's just the way it works. So there are ethical responsibilities, and please be careful of what you do on the internet. It's going to be a primary source, or it is a primary source of how people find you these days. So what you say has to be professional. It needs to be true. So do the profession a favor and be true to your word about things that you put out there. Networking and being involved in the community is also an important part of networking. It's a way for people to allow you to be known, especially when you're starting out. You can't just go out and, as we used to say in the olden days, hang a shingle up and expect people to all of a sudden show up. It doesn't work that way anymore. So make a point to get out there and provide education, provide free information to people. People like that. Are they going to turn around and instantly become your patient? No. Okay, if they do, congratulations, but it's probably not. But it will enhance the image practice, and it will come around over time as they do that. So this is not a program about marketing. That's a whole nother week. But understand that these are some of the things that, as a CEO, that you need to look for. Patient education is probably the single most important thing that you can have set in your practice because dentistry is a complex subject. Understanding treatment and helping people understand why they need the treatment that they need and making that connection is super critical. So however you choose to educate patients in your practice, as the CEO, you've got to make those decisions, all right? And you've got to help train people to be a part of that. There's also communication considerations when you look at marketing. Make sure that you are communicating what you're wanting to communicate. Be careful about hiring people, third parties, to do the communication for you. Boy, there are hundreds, I would say at least, of people out there wanting to do that. When you open a practice or go into a practice, you will start getting inundated with spam, nicely called email that you didn't want, for people that want to do all of this stuff for you on the internet or your website or things like that. Be very careful what you communicate and who you work with. It doesn't take talking to too many dentists to hear of horror stories, okay? So be careful with that. It's necessary, you're going to do it, but be very careful with that. As the CEO, you have that responsibility to make sure that how you communicate this information is appropriate and correct and truthful, okay? All right. Now, there is obviously lots more I mentioned. Third-party issues are another big topic that I previously mentioned. Dealing with insurance companies. You've got to get involved in understanding what insurance companies need from you, what they don't need from you, understanding benefit plans, how it impacts patients, etc. This is very important. It's also important for you to understand insurance companies in terms of the type of insurance that you should be having for yourself, okay? Such as disability and life insurance, professional malpractice insurance, overhead disability policies, etc. You've got to, you're going to be dealing with insurance companies, like it or not, and in some form or fashion. So learn what these insurance companies do, all right, and how they interact with your practice, okay? Don't just delegate all that, and then if you end up losing an employee, you're completely lost, okay? Claim rejection is something that's going to happen on a regular basis. I won't get on my soapbox about that, but understand how to handle claim rejections and how to provide the appropriate documentation. Doing it right the first time is probably one of the most important things you can do to avoid claim rejection. Nevertheless, it's going to happen for weird things because there are hundreds and hundreds of different insurance companies out there with all kinds of stuff. So there's no way for you to memorize that or know all that. You shouldn't, but there should be some sort of documentation so that you all can track that in your practice and make sure that you are following through on what needs to be done, as well as prevent the problems. Another one is the third-party complaint forms on how to deal with that. Forms, red tape, you're going to get lots of stuff, all right? Everything from Department of Labor to permits, etc. So you may even get a complaint form from a Better Business Bureau or something like that from somebody who's unhappy, right? How do you handle that? I mean, you're going to have that if you're in practice. Somebody is not going to be pleased with something that you've done, justified or unjustified. So how you go about handling that is very important, all right? Another thing is understanding what is a dental claim form, what are the elements of that claim form. The American Dental Association has a standard claim form that most dentists use. Most insurance companies accept that. Some will have their own. These days, filing claims electronically is something that you're going to want to look into for cost effectiveness for your practice. It's not something that you necessarily need to start with, but it's something that you should be looking at. And naturally, there should be more. We can't cover that in a short period of time. Work-life balance, again, I can't overemphasize that enough about taking great care of yourself. This is, in my opinion, one of the hardest professions out there. No, we are not out there laying brick every day, but what we do is very difficult because it demands so much from us on all different levels. And we are constantly, in the spotlight, as I said earlier, okay? So please take care of yourself. Don't get yourself to the point that you just want to go home and drink 2 glasses of red wine and sit on the couch and try to forget about the day, all right? That's really not a good place to be, okay? Not a good place. So, lots of things to contemplate. Where do you start? Where do you start with all this? It may seem a little bit overwhelming right now, but you will navigate it, okay? Just remember, you don't have to do it alone, okay? We need a village of people. And that village can include a mentor, okay? Somebody who has been in practice a while who can help you. It can include, your own personal commitment to learning because you need to do it, okay? Gone are the days where dental school was the last education that you ever need. Ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't let your ego get in the way of that. Ask for help from people. Work with a coach. I'm a coach, a professional coach, and I work with dentists on all kinds of topics like this. There are a couple other professional coaches who are dentists in the country. You may also find people who aren't dentists who are also coaches that can help you too. Consultants are, there's an enormous number of consultants available in dentistry, just so many that it's kind of mind-boggling. So you won't have any trouble if you want to hire a consultant. Get references, interview them, make sure that the person is right for your practice, okay? Use the online resources that are available to you. The ADA, for example, has a tremendous amount of resources, just as does the Academy of General Dentistry. And these are great dental-focused sources for you. Use them, okay? Use them. See what's there. The number of people number of dentists that actually go and look at these things is astoundingly low, and it's some great stuff, okay? It's some really great stuff. So, ask for help, look for help. Okay, it's just literally at your fingertips these days with the internet, and in any kind of form, whether it's a phone or a smartphone or a little pad or a laptop computer. Okay, so it's there. The last thing I would have to say to you about as a CEO, probably the single most important thing is plan, 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 okay? You cannot do many more important things than planning. If you've read any of Stephen Covey's work, for example, he talks about the different quadrants, and quadrant 2 is the planning quadrant. And that's where you should spend about 80% of your time is in planning. That may sound a little strange, but I spend a lot of my day reviewing my plan, modifying my plan, reprioritizing what I'm going to do. That keeps me focused and on track on what needs to be done and what's important, okay? So Benjamin Franklin said this. He said, by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail, okay? There's just a lot of wisdom in that. It's not rocket science, but if you'll remember that, you know, by failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. So you can't spend enough time doing this planning, okay? So ask for help. Get some help with people who can really work with you. So I wish you the very, very best as you start out on this incredible journey and opportunity of being a dentist. It's one of the most wonderful gifts that you've been given, even though at this point you may feel like, well, I earned it. Yes, you have. It's also a gift, and I hope you'll treat it as such and that you have much success in all you do. Thanks a lot.